Today, I am so excited to have my friend Stephanie Martin in a discussion today. Stephanie and I have known each other for a little over a year. We got to know each other really well. We spent a bunch of time together recently at a conference, and I just love her precious heart. She is just an amazing woman, loves the Lord like I do. And she is a health coach and the owner of Revived and Restored Health. And her focus is on helping people with autoimmunity, which is my one of my big focuses, and on mold toxicity, which I myself experience. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me today for our conversation.
Thank you, Teresa. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm so happy to have this time. So, I love starting with these conversations with just tell me, and our audience, tell me about how you ended up where you are today. We all have our journey, we all have our story, and I love sharing that. So tell me what brought you to this point today.
Yeah, of course. I'll have to try to condense it. It's long.
I know, right?
Yeah, I think they always are. But really, I always say that, holistic health doesn't become real until it becomes real for you.
Yeah.
And what I mean when I say that is probably up until I had my kids, I was very medically minded. And then my 6 month old daughter had a severe reaction to vaccines. And I took her to the ER. They had no idea what to do with her. They blew bulb syringes in her ear. Next thing I know, she had full blown ear infections to the point that she had them for the next 4.5 months. And prior to that, she'd never been sick.
Mm.
And my chiropractor introduced me to a amazing holistic doctor who was also a medical doctor, but he'd gone back and become a holistic doctor as well. And, he got her well when nobody else could. We started detoxing our body. He started teaching me all about detox. He basically kind of took me under his wing over the next 7 years, which was really amazing because, like, who
Wow.
does that?
Yeah.
But I was like a sponge. I was so fascinated to learn how your immune system really works and what that's all about. And so then from there, it just kind of kept going. Every time I was in his office, I'd be bringing my kids in, they'd be sick or something. And then he'd give me what needed to happen. And then he would teach me, this is
Wow.
how you fix this ailment kind of thing. And it was such an amazing time. At the time, I didn't realize it was an amazing time. At the time, it was like, why is everybody so sick? But I have to praise God for it now because it sparked in me a passion that I always had a thing for health because as a kid, I was really sick. I mean, like constantly sick all the time. And I just knew I didn't want my kids to have the same fate. So when I found this and started realizing that your body really can heal, your body was designed by an amazing creator and he gave us every single thing that we needed and it can heal. You just have to remove all the garbage that's stopping it from healing.
Right.
And I'm oversimplifying it, but it really is that simple.
Yeah.
And
Remove the
so,
interference.
yeah, so it just one thing led to the other. And, probably what got me into opening a business with this was recognizing the lack of education on emotional health. Now, it's become a lot more mainstream in the last 3 or 4 years since COVID and stuff. But I had a mom who was my partner in crime and was diagnosed with cancer. We put her on a protocol. Long story short, she went into remission, but then it came back a few years later. And at that time, she was just over it. She was tired. She was 85 years old. She was ready to go home and meet her maker, so to speak.
Yeah.
I heard things that she was talking about in those last days, things that happened to her when she was a little girl, like 5, 6 years old. And they
Yeah.
were like overly traumatic things. Like, it was nothing detrimental or anything that you would be still talking about 80 years later, but it was enough that it was basically a trapped emotion.
Yeah.
And upon doing a lot of research with it, I've learned, and the Bible even talks about how, you know, that what is it? Merry heart doeth good like a medicine, right? But then but when you're sick, it dries up the bones, right?
Right.
And so it's like you just have to really take a lot of that to heart, and it's literal.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of made me think, okay, I think the world needs this. It needs more than just clean up your diet, work out, because the fact of the matter is, if you're older than maybe 10 or 20, you've been through some kind of trauma. We all have a crazy story.
I'm serious. It's ridiculous. And sometimes it's hard too when it starts young because it's there. And that's your foundation. Those
Yeah.
are, they call that your foundational years. And when they
Mhm.
start off with a lot of heartache and a lot of trauma, it sets you up for just looking at life through the lens of the hurt and the pain and the trauma. And it's really hard. And when you're not well emotionally, it's really hard for your body to be well.
Oh, yeah. What I've found in my research, this blew me away, but the average person has over 1,000 trapped emotions.
I've done a lot of research and I'm certified in something called neuroemotional techniques. So I've studied emotions and trapped emotions and the effects on the body a lot, but I have never heard that. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
It blew me away when I heard that stat. I was like, holy
Sad,
cow.
but amazing. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Well, and and I think sometimes our bodies, just especially depending on where our mindset is at, you know what I mean? Like, I think if you have someone who has a genuine, healthy mindset, who is not looking at limiting beliefs and that sort of thing, which is not the norm, unfortunately. But I think a lot of times when you have someone who's got that mindset, those emotions may not be quite as quick to become trapped. Whereas if you have someone who's got more of a negative or a fixed mindset,
Mhm.
that the glass is always empty and everything always happens to me, and they're going to be a little bit more prone to internalize those emotions.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about being a product of our environment and that in our genetics. And there's just so many different things. But what I know for sure that is the absolute truth is the way our young minds work and the way we perceive the world around us is
Mhm.
not like we're they're not little adults, right? Their children are have their neurotransmitters aren't all working 100%. They're not all firing correctly. We don't have words to give to what we're experiencing. Our perception is what we believe it is, and so it could be right or wrong depending on what we've been taught or what we're feeling. And all those things, like you have, well, in NET we call it the neuro-emotional complex. It's the thing that happened, the experience that we had, our perception of it, the emotions that we felt, and then the actual chemicals in our brain that get released around the parahippocampal area, and they all get like tied up together in this little complex. And then they get form this little thing, and then something happens a little down the road and it reminds us of this, and then we relive the same thing in our brain and our emotions and our feelings as the first time. So then this gets trapped to this, and then we end up our whole life is like this chain of this necklace with all this stuff stuck together. And it's all because we didn't have the ability to process what happened to us at such a young age. If we're taught how to process our emotions from healthy people, which most of us are not,
Right.
most of us have parents that we're all broken. Yeah, we're all
Yeah.
flawed. And,
100%.
right. And we're not taught how to process it. We either aren't taught or we don't say anything, so they don't know it's a thing. And it just becomes this cascade effect that we live our
Mhm.
life until we come to understand how to heal those things and how to unravel those. That's what NET does. And there's other things, tapping and EMDR and DNRS. There's just so many different tools that we have in our toolbox that we didn't have a long time ago,
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm so grateful that a lot of this is coming to light because, like you said, I mean, we didn't have that. We had it, but it was an evolving
Yeah.
practice. You know what I
Even
mean?
I've been through things like healing the wounded heart, love to life. So I've learned all the different things from a biblical perspective,
Mm.
healing soul wounds, healing the wounds of the soul and stuff like that. All of them are valuable. They all have a role to play because they all address the different things that have gone on in our heart and our soul. Those things affect our physical body. Like we are not, you can't separate our soul and our body. They overlap.
Mhm.
And I tell people all the time, if you kick something really hard and stub your toe, it actually might bring tears to your eyes. So that's an emotional response to a physical stimulus.
Mhm.
There's such a thing as having like broken heart syndrome where you look like you're having a heart attack and the EKG changes because you've had a severe trauma.
Mhm.
So they're very interconnected. So one affects the other and vice versa. So coming across those techniques and ways to heal the heart and heal those wounds and release those trapped emotions is so important.
Yes, I agree 100% because, like I said, I know in my own life, I didn't know. Well, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Mhm.
And I knew emotions played a role. Like I said, the doctor that had trained me alluded to that. But and actually that was where I first learned about tapping and just, I mean, there's one thing about forgiveness in the Bible, and one thing I think that we don't, I say one thing, there's many things about the forgiveness in the Bible, but I'm saying that I don't know that people really understand how to move forward in forgive. You know what I mean? It's like it's one thing to say, I forgive Sally Jane for whatever. And I know for me, when I was going through a really rough time in my life, it was a divorce. And praise the Lord, it wasn't a nasty divorce. It was amicable. But at the same time, there were still those horrible feelings. There was the death of a marriage. There was, because I didn't want a divorce, you know? And so being on that side of it, that I didn't want to be in this position, but I was put in this position, whether I liked it or not. I'd had to figure out how to accept it. And so there was a lot of resentment and a lot of bitterness there. And I was just, I didn't know how to, I wanted to forgive him because that's what the Bible tells us, forgive or you're not going to be forgiven. Right.
Yeah.
And so I wanted, but I didn't know how. And I had an amazing mentor that told me one day, she said, Steph, is as simple as, I forgive this person. And Lord, I need for you to line up my feelings with that, line up my
100%.
heart. And so between doing that and then learning about emotional tapping and saying a phrase similar to that, I forgive this person, I still love myself, I'm still worthy, I'm still okay,
Yeah.
line up my feelings with that.
Yeah.
It was life changing.
Yeah.
And that was really probably the first introduction I had to, I knew emotions was a thing, but how do you process these negative emotions?
Yeah.
How do you flush them out? Because
Yeah.
we're going to have them, right?
Yeah.
It's how do we handle them in a mature way
Yeah.
where they don't lodge themselves and create other problems down the road?
And forgiveness, like unforgiveness is, I don't know who said it. I forget who said it, but it's amazing. I use it all the time. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and thinking the other person's going to die.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. That's true.
Yeah. And so when I look at, and it's not a once and done thing.
Mm.
Like it's not regarding a particular person or a particular event. Like it's a process sometimes,
Yes.
and it's a choice. It's a very much a choice. And you're right. Your emotions have to, you have to constantly realign your emotions with the
Yeah.
choice that you make, the decision
Mhm.
that you make to offer forgiveness, to I would say offer as in it doesn't matter whether they accept it or not. You are getting to that place where you're able to release forgiveness to that person. Whether they receive it or not is totally different, but you're able, because it's like prison like puts you in, I'm sorry, unforgiveness puts you in prison.
Yes.
Like it puts you in prison. They not that other person might not necessarily be there with you all the time, but you definitely are in that prison if you cannot let go and you're trapped in that prison of unforgiveness that, and those deep roots of bitterness that affect just every area of our life, then it just spreads like I forget where I was recently. Somebody used the illustration. If I put a drop of sewer water in here, would you drink it? Right?
Mhm.
No, of
That's
course you
right.
wouldn't. But that's what
Right.
unforgiveness does. It pollutes the whole cup,
Yeah.
Like so you can't just like it has to be over and over and the more trauma you experience, the more painful things that have happened to you, the harder it is sometimes. I will tell you, unforgiveness is like one of the biggest things that I have had to work through.
Yeah, agreed. 100%. I love what you said, that it's a process. I think too many times, especially in the instant gratification society we live in, too many times people think forgiveness is a one and done.
Yeah.
Oh, so and so and so and so made me mad. Okay, I forgive them and let's move on to
Yeah.
the next so and so.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is that most people don't realize that it really is a process, and
Yeah.
we have to be kind to ourselves. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
I think as long as we're here on this earth in this broken state that it's in, I believe that forgiveness is honestly probably an ongoing thing,
Yeah.
because every day we have an opportunity to be offended,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know, and it's like, I don't know. There's a great book called The Bait of Satan, which I absolutely
A
love.
great book. John
Yes,
Bevere. Yeah.
yes. He talks about offense and he talks about not taking the bait. And he said, now, what if you have a right to be offended, right?
Right.
But
That's
it's,
exact, and that's a big one. I have a
yeah,
right. I have been wrong,
I have a
you know?
right. This person did me wrong and everything.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's going to come home to roost with you. The other
Yeah.
person, they're going on, they're doing
Right.
their thing, they're just
Yeah.
happy go lucky, and you're over here. "Arr." I
Yeah.
mean, and it's like, yeah, so I think it's very important that we mention the process
Yeah.
and being kind to ourselves as we walk through that
Yeah.
process and not turn on ourselves. Because a lot of times we turn on
Yeah.
ourselves, like, why
Yeah.
can't I get this?
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of in nursing, and I've taken psychology and abnormal psychology and sociology and then psychology and nursing and all these different things. And we learn about the stages of grief. Dr. Kubler-Ross had the stages of grief. And it's not like you go from like there's 5 stages and I'll get them all. I think I'll get them wrong because I don't remember all. It's like there's like bargaining and denial and something something, and you finally get to acceptance where
Yeah,
like
I
you,
think it's
okay, I
anger
got
and
it.
something, and then yeah, bargaining or I can't
Yeah,
remember.
I can never remember the other two. I always remember bargaining and I remember a denial because those are the two that people live in the most, you know.
Yeah,
But it's like we used to call it a slippery slope because we actually talked about this when I went through divorce too. Like it's not like you can just go from one to one to one to one and then finally you're there. It's like you're here, you're here, you're here, you're here, you're here. It's all over the
right.
place.
And
And you're
sometimes you go
like,
back. You know what I
right.
mean?
And then that person, like with unforgiveness, I remember going to someone that we had this thing happen. And this was years late after the offensive relationship had ended. And I went to the person, I said, I really feel like I'm supposed to just apologize again for any part that I had to play in what, went wrong. And instead of saying, well, thank you, they made a statement that was not as kind as what I was hoping it would be.
No,
And
wow.
I got offended all over again. And then I was like, geez, now I gotta go forgive them again. I'm like, but it was easier then that time to go, okay, I don't want this to be continue to be the pattern because it's not affecting them. Obviously, by the nature of the comment that was made, it was not offending them or affecting them anymore, I should say. They had totally moved past that. And I was the one with the hang up, which is why I was the one that had to go and apologize.
Mm.
So if I was the one that was offended, and then I was the one that had to work through that unforgiveness again, I thought, you know what? There has to be a better way that I don't have to keep repeating this over and over and over again. So I don't keep going around and around the same mountain. And what helped me and what has helped me over the years is just praying and asking the Lord to help me to see that person through his eyes and give me a heart of compassion like he has towards them. I'm just as broken, just in a different way. We're all broken
Yeah.
at some point. We all need a savior
Oh,
to,
yes,
we all
100%.
need healing.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether you believe in the God of that I believe in, we all still have this broken, flawed nature that we all need to, our hearts need to be healed and we need to focus on us and have compassion and love towards other people rather than this constantly being offended because my gosh, there are so many things, as you said, in our world right now that it's so easy to take offense and
Oh,
that
yeah.
is just not, it's not healthy. It doesn't
No.
do healthy things for the cells.
Mm-mm.
Doesn't do
And the
healthy
thing
things
is
for the body.
it doesn't even, and here's what a lot of people don't know or don't, I don't think they think about. They're like, they jump on their little bandwagon. They're like, all right, I'm going to clean up my diet. All right, I'm going to go get out and work out. I'm going to do all the things. And they do all the things. But then there's all this inside of them. And now you can get into the gym and just really pump it out really hard and kind of thing. And that's a great stress reliever. Okay.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's like, well, what's causing chronic inflammation? Right. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of our food that we eat is causing chronic inflammation. But what a
Mhm.
lot of people I don't think realize also is that if your stress levels are up here and you never have that peace about you and you're always just, I mean, gimped up and you're carrying all these different things or whatever, the stress in and of itself, and whether that's stress from a job, stress from your emotions, stress from somebody made you mad and you just haven't let it go, all of that's going to play a big part in cellular inflammation.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And most people they don't even look at that. They don't even think about
Yeah.
that because they're just like, oh yeah, stress. But I think a lot of it too, it has to do with the culture that we live in because in America, You hear phrases like, "Oh, you can sleep when you're dead," or "I can sleep tomorrow," or whatever, and they just really downplay sleep, and that's just one thing, right? But when you go to other parts of the world, like Italy, for example, they shut down every day at 4 o'clock, and they don't open back up until 7, and that's to spend time with their families. And
Yep.
when I first read that, I was like, "I wanna go to Italy." It's
I
like,
know.
that's
That's what the
crazy.
siesta in the Hispanic cultures, their siesta, everything, the sidewalks rolled up at 2 o'clock
Yeah.
and it's time to take a nap. And it's like,
Yes, and I'm like,
wow.
"Holy cow." Yeah, but in America, it's a 90-hour work week is not uncommon, or a 70-hour work week. I mean, it's just and I was reading an article the other day, and there's a company, I won't mention who it is because you'll know who it is, and I don't want to sound like I'm bad mouthing them, but there's a company that's recently put in a mandate that everybody has to come back into the office. No more working from home.
Yeah.
And of course the employees are really upset about that.
Yeah.
And rightly so. I can see that. They've spent the last 4 years at home working remotely, and now they want them to go back into this office. And they were really frustrated because, I mean, there's been statistics, and there's been all kind of data that's been gathered about this kind of thing, that when you work from home, you're typically more productive. Because when you go to lunch, you just go downstairs. You don't go out and stay gone for 2 hours. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
If you take a break,
Like
it's to go to the
no
bathroom.
chit
You don't.
chat around the water cooler kind of
Yeah,
thing, you know?
exactly. You're not
Yeah.
doing all of that, right? So
Yeah.
people are typically more productive, and not that this is a good thing, but if they have to finish something up, they're more prone to keep working on it till 5:30 or 6 and then take off, because they don't have that crazy drive home where they're stuck in traffic and all this,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so, but now they want to take them back to the office. And I'm thinking, I don't know if he really looked at any data on that. So I'm just like, I don't know how emotionally that's going to go for their workforce, because at the end of the day, I think what we see in other nations that we don't see as typical in America is the workforce isn't valued. So there's a lot of talk right now about work and life balance. I think more and more people are looking for that work life balance.
Hmm.
And that's where emotions, again, that's where the emotions come into play, because whenever you're in a place of balance and you don't feel like everything, like your priorities are all out of whack and stuff, then you can have that peace. And then I think it's a lot easier to flush out those emotions. But whenever you've got a boss who's telling you have to be here at such and such a time, and you've got to work however many hours they want you to work or whatever. And even if you're a business owner, I mean, that's the people I work with are business owners and executives. And that's where the 70 and 90 hours a week come from. And they feel like that's just what you're supposed to do. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you can schedule, or you can set up your life to be one that induces health or one that induces sickness.
100%.
But either way, one of them is going to find you,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
I had somebody tell me I had a discussion with a guy. I was at a conference. Oh, it was before the pandemic. So it was a while ago. And he's like, in the Bible, it doesn't even talk about balance. It talks about rhythms and seasons. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Because if I'm in a rhythm, there's a ebb and flow, and it is a balance to speak, so to speak, but it's like there's a rhythm that you fall into. And in nature, like we were just talking about, like my dog, when she's tired, she takes a nap.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That's true.
there is night, there's day, there's seasons, and in the climate, and there's a time of rest when the trees don't have to have the leaves and the produce fruit and things like that, and because it's all things are being made new.
Mm.
That's how the regenerative process in nature goes on, and we seem to think that we can do better than that, and accept that that's our planet has survived and thrived for thousands of years in these rhythms and seasons of ebb and flow. And I just think that there has to be more of a getting back to that. My husband and I are even just talking this morning about what it means to only eat food that's grown available locally, and only when it's in season. Like that's an ancient thing that they did in Ayurvedic medicine, or Ayurvedic practices, Chinese medicine, even biblically. They could up until 100, maybe 150 years ago, you could only eat what was grown. There
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
like, you
100%.
ate what was available in your area. at
Hmm.
the time of the year that it was.
Yep.
It's this modern age has kind of like changed things. And so it gets us out of rhythm with
Mhm.
even the food that we eat.
Oh,
And
agreed, 100%. And even the food when you buy it and it's not, I mean, yeah, you might can grow strawberries year round, but I can tell you the strawberries in the fall are nothing compared to the strawberries in the summer,
no,
you know?
right? In our area, it's June, July. The strawberries are big and juicy and sweet and have all kinds of phytonutrients. And then if you buy them out of season, you cut them open, they're mostly white. They're not
Yeah.
even, there's
Yeah.
nothing
And they're
there.
very sour. They don't
Yeah,
taste
very
good.
sour. They're not sweet. They're dry. They're crunchy, kind of gross. But
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I had one of the things I was thinking about when we were talking about emotions, and we both deal with autoimmunity. When you talk about the mind body connection, when we have these emotions and Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, there is often emotions that are related with different organ systems and different parts of the body. And in autoimmune, just as a physiology of what happens, in simple terms, it's the body kind of turning on itself.
Hmm.
Emotionally, most people, and I'm not going to make a blanket black white statement, but a lot more times than not, the people that deal with autoimmune have a really hard time loving themselves. They have a
Mm.
hard time accepting themselves. They turn on themselves all the time. I mean, I can't tell you how many, I would say every patient I have that has autoimmune, that is at the core when we start getting into that as I build, they come to me with the physical things.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I really have.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I always prepare questions that we're going to talk to. We didn't even get to one of them.
We'll do that on the next one.
We'll just do that the next time. We'll save them for
Yeah,
later.
that works. That works
So,
definitely. I think you
uh,
went in a good direction though, because these are
I
some things that I think we all need to hear about.
I think this is a great, especially for this season that we're in right now.
Yes,
So
100%.
yeah.
100%.
So thank you so, so much. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for inviting me on. It was definitely an honor and a privilege to be here for sure.
You are very welcome. So, if you want to learn more about Stephanie, she has revived and restored health.com.
Mhm.
And of course, foundationsandwellness.com. You can reach either one of us that way. And we are happy to help you in whatever. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and look for us on all social media. We're both on social media.
Yes, 100%.
Have a
All
great
right.
day.